It took a lot of me at the very first sound back in 2002. Hence the reason why I do have two books in the Library of Congress that has already that's sitting there, copywritten. One of them is titled Born, Raised, and Assimilated, that I believe around 2002, which was very raw, that I sent. And then another one that I did 5 years later, which should have been, which was a soldier story, which would have been my very first book that I've published, but instead Therapy ended up being my very first book. Hence why A Soldier Story is going to be the second one that I'm going to work on into releasing. And then Mystery Man is going to be the third one. And like I said, there's a method behind everything that's happening. And as you guys continue to get to know me or do your research about me, you know exactly why I've said that. Or unless you go back to my Instagram and my TikTok pages and you could go back from the beginning of when I started on this online marathon, then you know exactly why right now I'm standing in such power that I'm standing on, okay? So with that said, we often settle for less, which has much to do, and I already read that, but I'm going to read it again. We often settle for less, which has much to do with how our mindsets and perceptives are constructed, you know, from what or who we are, traits, learning, biological, evolutionary, and let's not forget the last two, stability versus modifiability, and free will versus determinism, that eventually made us so comfortable with the norms. Nowadays, though, in the present moment, modern day, we should question the norms that have made us act like strangers to one another, let alone to our families, as predicted in the facetious verses in the Revelation. I add the facetious in there because I didn't know what I know now. So when I wrote it in 2002, I was operating on a BCE timeline. When I revised it in 2012, I was operating from an AD, century and millennial timeline. And when I revised it 6 months ago, in November 11th, which was the last day I stopped doing a 9-to-5 rat race, and which took me about 4 months to revise it, I revised it in its entirety, but I don't want to give it away. So let's continue, okay? Nowadays, we should question the norms that have made us act like strangers. I reread where I left off so that way it gives you guys a chance to catch up, okay? Nowadays, we should question the norms that have made us act like strangers to one another, let alone to our families, as predicted in the verses in the Revelation.